Hi everyone. We're in the book The Goodness of God by John Wenham, and the question we're asking is punishment of sin a mark of God's goodness? What happens to societies where there is no law enforcement? Well, we're actually living in a time where we've seen that being challenged, whether or not we need law enforcement. But what is the fruit when there is no law enforcement? Are we really in a position to challenge God, His right to pass judgment? Are we in a position to say that He's unfair or unjust? Many people look at the Old Testament and think that about God. But do we really want God to be completely just or completely merciful? And when God judges us, what is He judging? Just the outward acts? As a Jehovah's Witness, I would say I concentrated on behavior, rules of behavior, and not enough on character, my own character. Listen to what John Wenham says in his book here. Again, responsibility can be thought of simply in terms of accountability for Again, responsibility cannot be thought of simply in terms of accountability for isolated acts. A man who is drunk may do things which he did not and would not choose to do. He has become irresponsible, but he is responsible for his irresponsibility. A man may be a compulsive gambler, literally unable to control himself, but his state may have been partly the result of culpable laziness or greed earlier in life. A man is answerable for his character, even more fundamentally than for his acts. So I thought that was a very interesting comment, being answerable for your character more than your outward acts, because a person could be doing all the right things and have a very bad character. So he's doing it for different reasons. So regarding punishment, Wenham continues, it is not too much to say that punishments, unpleasant though they are to those who undergo them and to those who administer them, are vital to human happiness. Just law is an expression of God's character, and so it is that the theme of God's judgments permeates the Bible. The God of the Bible not only deters, He also punishes. According to the Bible, the supreme retribution is death, and death, both physical death and eternal spiritual death, is what sin deserves. Basically, sin is preferring to go one's own way rather than God's way, to choose one's own self-centered, selfish, corrupting world rather than the unspeakable glory of life in the presence of the great, holy, loving God. To forfeit the presence of God is to forfeit all. Sin gives birth to sins, and the sins bring in their train a seemingly endless trail of sadnesses, uglinesses, and horrors. But these are the outworkings of something deeper, the choice of self rather than God. To go the way of the Lord, to grow up, that is, into the likeness of Christ, for which we were made, is life. To go against the will of God, that is to reject the likeness and the love of Christ, is death. This is not only basic to the teaching of the Bible, it is also sober, logical sense. If God exists, and if man is made for the very purpose of enjoying God's love, his rejection of that love can mean only ultimate disaster. He puts himself under the wrath of God, For the wrath of God is the obverse of the love of God. It is love rejected. Furthermore, because sin deserves death, and we are all sinners, it means that all our mercies are undeserved mercies. Any apparent unfairness in God's treatment of us arises not because some have too much punishment, but because some of us appear to have too little. None of us will ever receive harsher judgment than we deserve. The fact of God's grace was understood in the Old Testament times. He is a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. He does not deal with us according to our sins. In Ezra's words, "Thou, our God, has punished us less than our iniquities deserved." In the New Testament, God's undeserved grace is the unending theme. The marvel is, in the biblical view, not that men die for their sins, but that we remain alive in spite of them. Many find that in the Old Testament, God's judgments of individuals and nations, they find them too severe. And yet the leaders of that time, and the priests and the prophets, didn't seem to see it so. And nor did King David of Israel. I thought maybe we would actually read the prayer of Ezra, the priest, in Ezra 9, verses 6 to 13. This is his prayer to God. He says, "O my God, I am too ashamed and disgraced to lift up my face to you, my God, because our sins are higher than our heads and our guilt has reached to the heavens. From the days of our forefathers until now, our guilt has been great. Because of our sins, we and our kings and our priests have been subjected to the sword and captivity, to pillage and humiliation at the hand of foreign kings, as it is today. But now, for a brief moment, the Lord our God has been gracious in leaving us a remnant and giving us a firm place in his sanctuary. And so our God gives light to our eyes and a little relief in our bondage. Though we are slaves, our God has not deserted us in our bondage. He has shown us kindness. In the spirit of the kings of Persia, he has granted us new life to rebuild the house of our God and to repair its ruins. And he has given us a wall of protection in Judah and Jerusalem. But now, O our God, what can we say after this? For we have disregarded the commands you gave through your servants, the prophets, when you said, the land you are entering to possess is a land polluted by the corruption of its peoples. By their detestable practices they have filled it with their impurity from one end to the other. Therefore, do not give your daughters in marriage to their sons, or take their daughters for your sons. Do not seek a treaty or friendship with them at any time, that you may be strong and eat the good things of the land, and leave it to your children as an everlasting inheritance. What has happened to us is a result of our evil deeds and our great guilt. And yet, our God, you have punished us less than our sins have deserved, and have given us a remnant like this." So, while in exile, they're given the right to go and rebuild the temple. They see this as a mercy from God, in spite of the fact that they're in captivity because of their sins. They were judged. So sometimes I think we look at the Old Testament and think only the other nations got judged. But the nation of Israel also got judged by God and punished by God. You might also want to look up Psalm 103, where David describes God. I'm going to link two videos. One is James Orr that David did, called God's Eternal Purpose Defined by Love, but Does Not Exclude Wrath and Judgment. And a series that he did on Rahab by Safar, a Jewish Christian convert. So it's called, I'll put in the first of 4 videos and you can just follow the links after the first one. Rahab the harlot. Canaan dwells in peace and security, but there's a rumor about coming wrath. And then the next time we're going to talk about the people who criticize God as being too soft and letting those that do evil acts get away with it and innocent people suffer. What can be said about that?